Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. So, if you're new to the Partnership for Food Safety Education, just really quickly, we're here because each year 1 in 6 people in the US get sick from foodborne illness. That leads to 128,000 hospitalizations and about 3,000 deaths. We want to keep people safe from food poisoning. We're a network of 13,000 public health and food safety educators. We have about 40 partner organizations and federal liaisons with CDC, FDA, and USDA. Our goal is to work together to advance trusted, consistent, science-based health messaging to prevent foodborne illness. And before I introduce our speaker, just a couple really quick housekeeping items. After the presentation, there'll be a Q&A with the speaker. So you can go ahead and add any questions you have for her during her presentation to the Q&A box. If you're looking for CEU information, that will go out in the follow-up email after the webinar, and certificates will be posted also on the website. Just a quick note for those seeking NCHEC credits, there is a questionnaire that you'll need to have filled out by December 12th. And now I would like to introduce our speaker for today, the amazing Candace Christian, who is an Extension Associate and the Safe Plates Home and Community Program Manager with North Carolina State University. Welcome, Candace.
Thanks, Katie. Happy to be here this afternoon. I love the Menti poll. I did not include a microwave, so if anyone has any fact sheets on microwave safety, that'd be awesome to share throughout this. Okay. All right. Can you see my screen well? Hopefully.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So it's 2025. Our kitchens are evolving with new gadgets. So we've got air fryers, multi-cookers. I saw Katie had on there the real MVP, the food thermometers. We also have immersion wands. We've got all sorts of technology that we can leverage to have safer cooking. So that's what we'll talk about today. Not just faster cooking, but also making sure it's safe. All right, so a little bit about who I work with and the team that I'm on. So I'm with North Carolina State Extension. We are part of the Safe Plates team. We've got Dr. Ben Chapman, Dr. Ellen Shoemaker. They're the ones that lead our Safe Plates outreach efforts. And then my coworker, Dr. Savannah Everhart Noon, she is the one that works on our retail food safety side. And then I work on any of our home and community programming. So that includes consumer food safety and home food preservation. All right, so what we'll talk about this afternoon is by the end of this session, we'll accomplish three key objectives. So first, we'll understand the safety role of common gadgets like the food thermometer and the air fryer, etc. Next, we'll master the correct use of low and high temperature cooking devices like the slow cooker and the Instapot and what's the difference. And then lastly, we're going to discuss how to effectively communicate these essential tips that you're getting today with the public and framing safety potentially as well as a benefit. All right, so let's first talk about food thermometers. We can't talk about food safety and cooking without a food thermometer. So on here, I've got, I would say, the most critical gadget for preventing foodborne illness, and I think most of you would agree. So the key message when you're talking to consumers about this is when you're cooking, you can't tell if the food is safe just by looking at it. We've got to measure the internal temperature of that food. Sometimes you'll hear risky comments on cooking, such as, well, I'm thinking about holiday food safety, but you'll sometimes hear comments about the turkey, like the turkey is done when it's perfectly golden brown, or the turkey is done when those juices run clear. I'm sure many of you have heard that. Or another one that's pretty common around the holidays is the turkey's done when the pop-up thermometer pops. The reality of all those comments is they're not using a food thermometer to check the internal temperature of that food, and to make sure that we're preventing harmful bacteria from growing and checking that temperature. So the only way to know, for example, we're going to keep it holiday talking, but the only way to know if a turkey is cooked is with a food thermometer, reading at 165 degrees Fahrenheit, in the thigh, in the wing, and in the breast. Those pop-up thermometers that turkeys will come with sometimes, those are unreliable. So just as you are educating the community, remind your audience that they must use a food thermometer that's calibrated or verified. And when you are measuring the internal temperature of a turkey, make sure that they're avoiding the bone as well, and that probe is clean every time after every use as well. Oops, I'm going backwards. Here we go. All right, so next we're going to talk about more niche kitchen gadgets that you might see or might not be familiar with. So, this might introduce you to them. So, for those of you that aren't familiar with defrosting trays, they're also sometimes called thawing mats. They're a cool little gadget if used correctly. Manufacturers that sell these, they claim that it's a rapid thawing mat that can reduce the thawing time for frozen food by half or more. So it's supposed to be quicker at thawing. So usually they say within 30 minutes, depending on the thickness of the food and room temperature, it's supposed to thaw that food. So at NC State a few years ago, we actually did an experiment in our research and teaching kitchens on campus to see if these thawing mats worked. And this is when they were newer on the market. So what we did with our experiment is we used 4 ounces of chicken breast. The ambient temperature was 70 degrees Fahrenheit in this kitchen. And we used the four different thawing methods. So we refrigerated the 4 ounces of chicken in the refrigerator, also through cool water. We did it on the counter, just on a plate on the counter. And then we also used this thawing mat. Um, Obviously, thawing on the counter is not a safe option, but for the experiment, we wanted to see if this thawing mat actually cut the thawing time in half. So, what we found out in the four thawing methods is that thawing chicken in cool water, that's the quickest way to thaw food, at least in our experiment with the chicken breast. The thawing mat, it worked within 45 minutes for the 4 ounces of chicken. So it didn't work exactly as the manufacturer said it would. It was a little longer. And basically, what happened in the experiment is comparing the counter to the thawing mat. They were on pace with each other until it hit 30 minutes. That's when the thawing mat actually really started to work, and we saw a big difference. So, up until 30 minutes, I mean, the thawed chicken, it was the same as if you just put it on a plate. But it did work in our experiment, but the best option if you want it to be quick to thaw food, it appeared to be cool water was the quickest. So some safety tips with a defrosting tray that you might want to consider. So you want to avoid keeping raw meat, poultry, and seafood from sitting out on the tray for 4 hours or more. So we want it out of the temperature danger zone. Also, you want to use the tray for small, thin cuts that can thaw completely and quickly. So, like I said, when we did our experiment at NC State, we only did 4 ounces of chicken. It wasn't, a large amount of poultry that we did. Also, the third one, and usually the defrosting tray comes with either like a rimmed plate or pan, but this is just to say there should be a rimmed plate or pan underneath the tray to catch any moisture or drips or raw juices spreading onto your countertops. And then you would have to clean and, I mean, you should clean and sanitize your countertops anyway, but we want to try to prevent and contain the mess. But yeah, you would definitely need to use that pan that the defrosting tray comes with to help prevent cross-contamination. Um, some other additional comments on here is when you have defrosted food, remember that thawed frozen food, it is perishable. So we have to treat it as such, making sure that it goes in the refrigerator or you're cooking it right then and there immediately. Okay, so we'll move on to our next one. Okay, so immersion wand. So what is this? So an immersion wand is also, you might have seen it as an immersion circulator. It's a tool that performs sous vide cooking. So it helps perform sous vide cooking method. So sous vide, it's a cooking technique of basically you're sealing food in a bag and immersing it in a water bath. So this immersion wand, it's actually a device that clips onto a pot or container and it heats and circulates the water to maintain a precise, stable temperature for food. And this is a really cool gadget. So some benefits of these immersion wands that you might have seen is they're pretty small. It's compact, so they can be stored very easily. It's not just, an additional kitchen gadget that you get for, a birthday or a holiday, and you don't know where to put it in your kitchen because it's so massive. This is nice and compact. It can be used with various containers of different sizes, so it's versatile to use. It also provides a precise temperature control needed for the sous vide method. A couple things though with an immersion wand is that you don't want to fill up the pot above a maximum fill line. And this is very high level of how to use an immersion wand. You always want to follow your manufacturer's instructions on this. You also want to make sure that you're using plain water only, sealed bag of food before immersing it into the water. So the bag really does need to be sealed so you're not making a mess. And then you want to press all the air, as much air as you can from the bag so it stays immersed in that water. And then with the immersion wands, making sure that you're following a tested recipe for the minimum temperature and time. So you want to see how you're supposed to be using this kitchen gadget. And that's honestly going to be throughout this presentation as we'll talk about, see what the manufacturer says on using it. But this is a nice tool. One of the key risks of this tool, though, in terms of safety, is storage. So if the food isn't eaten immediately, it must be cooled quickly through the temperature danger zone. This could be done through an immediate, like, ice bath. You just want to make sure that if it's placed in the fridge, that it has been cooled a bit, just to prevent pathogen growth on this. Okay, so now we're going to move on to one that it looked like from the poll that most of you are familiar with. So a multi-cooker, so such as the Instant Pot. So this is a multifunctional device that cooks food at high temperatures and low temperatures. It's a great tool. If you don't have a lot of space, this is, one of those kitchen gadgets that you can do a lot with. So with these multi-cookers, you always use a food thermometer to make sure that the food has reached a safe temperature. That's with all of these gadgets. You want to make sure that you're using the MVP kitchen gadget, the food thermometer. Making sure with this device that you are washing the appliance properly is really important. So, the multi cookers and Instapots, they use that high heat and high pressure, and it destroys pathogens rapidly. The safety focus with this multi cooker or this kitchen tool is it shifts from is this food hot enough to how exactly are we handling this machine? So the main risks are burns, cross-contamination. Think about the proper method that the like just where the pressure is released on here. Just this is just kitchen safety in general, but making sure that you're avoiding steam burns or like hot liquid splatter as well. So you just want to make sure that you're preventing any sort of physical harm on here. And then another thing to consider that happens sometimes is when people use this device, they'll be done with their meal and they will store the food in the pot directly into the refrigerator freezer. So that's something else that we would like to avoid. And that's because you wouldn't have the rapid cooling like you would need. All right, so for slow cookers, with this, it cooks food at a low temperature for a longer amount of time. So, a few food safety considerations is you want to add liquid that's necessary to create the steam needed to cook the food. So, making sure that, if you don't add enough liquid, the food is probably going to burn at the end. So, that's one thing with quality. Another thing is you want to make sure at the end that you are checking the temperature of the food and not assuming that it is correct. So you always want to check the temperature of it. And you don't want to cook the food on warm. And this is one of the issues that we'll sometimes see with consumers is they don't realize that they have it on the warm setting or it's not warm enough or um, they haven't checked to see how hot is this slow cooker actually getting, especially if it's an older slow cooker. So you want to check and make sure that the hot food is staying hot. It should reach 135 degrees Fahrenheit if we're hot holding. Another key thing with the slow cookers is we want to make sure that we're keeping the lid on, and this is to maintain that temperature. So it's recommended to start at the highest setting for the first hour if you can, or use hot liquid to get that temperature up quickly. So, if you're using beef stock, for example, if you have that warmed up beforehand and then you're putting it into the slow cooker, that would help make sure that we are preventing things from staying a while in that temperature danger zone. So just remember that like we do not want to use the warm setting to cook, and it's only for holding hot food that is already cooked. Okay, so air fryers. Air fryers are really awesome. They're really powerful and they're compact. Convention ovens, they rely on high speed air, which it can dramatically speed up exterior cooking. So, one of the safety challenges with an air fryer is probably just making sure that you're paying attention, your vigilance in the kitchen. So, the outside, it crisps so easily, so quickly. Consumers often assume that the food is actually done. And this is where the food thermometer comes in, is that you could have, a piece of chicken. It's crispy, it looks ready to go, but all on the inside, it's raw and it's not safe to consume. So that's where it's really important that we are checking the internal temperature of the food we're using for these air fryers. So another thing here is that we must address cross-contamination issues. For example, handling, maybe you put wings in here, but handling raw wings, placing them in the air fryer basket, and then you haven't washed your hands, you're now touching the controls all in the front of this air fryer. So that's one possible food safety concern on there, just making sure that you're washing your hands constantly. Another thing about air fryers to think about is making sure that we're warning consumers about batch cooking. So we want to make sure that we are preventing any sort of like overcrowding. This really prevents that air circulation to be effective in a air fryer. So we want to make sure that we don't have any cold spots where the bacteria can thrive, is what we're trying to prevent. Another thing with air fryers is this is a no on food allergens, but if you have a family member or a guest that's coming for a holiday gathering, just keep in mind that air fryers are a bit difficult to clean, the internal parts. So, if you have anyone that you're cooking for that has a food allergy, just be cautious of what you are putting into the air fryer. Make sure that you are cleaning and sanitizing your air fryer after each use. Okay. Now we're going to talk about dehydrators. Now, I know this one is a little different, but I will say, at least at NC State, this year we had like double of the amount of entries of dehydrated food at our fair. So I thought I would just add this in here because you just never know what people are going to use. But the dehydrator seems really popular this year, at least in my state. People can make turkey jerky. They could make apple fruit leathers. It's all sort of seasonal things that they could do that might be for a holiday gathering. But with dehydrators, you want to always clean and sanitize the equipment. Obviously, washing produce beforehand thoroughly. Um, what another thing to consider is like there are two different types of dehydrators that you could purchase or a consumer could purchase, a vertical dehydrator and a horizontal dehydrator. Um, they work differently. You just want to follow the manufacturer's instructions when you are using a dehydrator. See how long that you're supposed to leave the food in. Um, Preparing, oh, I already talked about preparing, but basically you want to dry consistently at 140 degrees Fahrenheit. This maintains a consistent temperature in the dehydrator and it encourages a rapid drying and making sure that we are preventing harmful bacteria from growing in the food. All right, so vacuum sealers. This is another one that's pretty popular when we talk about um, um, storage. So vacuum packaging, it doesn't replace food preservation. It merely is a different packaging method, if you will. So in other words, refrigerated foods still require refrigeration or freezing, and it's not a replacement if you have a consumer that you're talking to, or if you yourself are into home canning, this isn't a replacement for home canning. Um, Bacteria that causes spoilage, it may have access to the food, and it might have it turn into like slime or mold or a smelly blob. Um, Basically harmful bacteria. It can survive, when you are sealing this food, it doesn't prevent that. Another consideration with a vacuum sealer is, Clostridium botulinum. It needs only 2% of oxygen. So it's a dangerous pathogen that could survive, that could survive potentially in these packaging. So just making sure that you are following the instructions from the manufacturer. So some vacuum sealer manufacturers, they will, I mean, I think most of them actually, you'll see it on the instructions. They'll say do not package raw onions or fresh mushrooms or fresh garlic, and it's due to botulinum concerns. Other foods that you want to be mindful of is there's a heightened risk of reduced oxygen packaging fish. So fish, when you are thawing it, it needs to be removed from this packaging. If you are vacuum sealing it, that's a concern. And then, just in terms of quality, manufacturers will say that, bakery foods and liquid products, they're not really great with the vacuum sealer. You could try, but like with liquid products, a lot of times it'll just be very messy. And with the bakery foods, sometimes it's not like great quality. So vacuum sealing though, it does have a purpose. It's best used for freezing to prevent freezer burn, and it helps extend the quality for many months or years. But the food is safe indefinitely only as long as it stays frozen. So only as long as it's at 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so flow of food. So I wanted to add this in here just because, the holiday season is coming up. A lot of people have Thanksgiving on their mind. So the first thing of I wanted to add in here what preparation might look like. So defrosting tray is something that you might use. So phase one or step one, so preparation and cleaning. So the first step of preparing food, you're going to properly wash hands, clean and sanitize all preparation surfaces, any knives you're using, cutting boards. Maybe you're using this defrosting tray or thawing mat. So, like I said before, the thawing mat, it should be used for smaller items. If you have a large item such as a turkey, that should be thawed in the refrigerator. So allow about 24 hours for like every 5 pounds. Ideally, it works well in the refrigerator. I would not recommend a large turkey with these defrosting trays. That wouldn't be very appropriate. So then step two is cooking. So you've got a lot of options with these kitchen gadgets for cooking. So we have the immersion wand that we talked about. So you can sous vide with this tool. You have temperature control with this tool that might be great. With this though, you want to make sure that you're always following tested recipes for a minimum temperature and time to use for this. And you want to use a food thermometer after cooking as well. When we think about multi-cookers in cooking, so this is a rapid cooking time. So this is a high pressure and temperature, significantly reducing that cooking time that you might need. So this might be a great option, if you're making like a sweet potato casserole, if you will, on here. And then you'd want to make sure, of course, that you're checking it with a food thermometer. With the slow cooker, you want to ensure the food is thawed before adding to it. And as I said before, it's recommended to start on the highest setting for the first hour if you can, or you could use that hot liquid, like I said, to put that into the pot first, and that'll help raise that temperature quickly. But the main thing is we want to make sure that we're avoiding the warm setting to try to cook. The next thing that you could think about for cooking is air frying, the air fryer. So this could be helpful for either reheating. So if you need something to be crisper, possibly if it's been hot held for a while, or just you could use that as like the finishing last stage. So this is really a great kitchen gadget to quickly reheat those side dishes or crisping up any sort of like skin or crust that you have. Um, as always, if you are reheating leftovers, though, that air fryer, you must bring that food to a minimum internal temperature of 165. And then lastly, with cooking, and I keep saying it just after every kitchen gadget, but you make sure you want to have a verification step. So using that food thermometer, it's the most important tool that we can use. And then step three, we're thinking about like hot holding. In this presentation, I didn't talk about cold holding. That's just as important. But in terms of the gadgets we've been talking about, the slow cooker, the multi cooker, using the warming setting, that's a great way to hot hold. I still would recommend that you use a food thermometer and periodically check and see it's maintaining that temperature of 135 degrees Fahrenheit or above. And then the last step is the is storage. So you have all of this food. You want to make sure that there's rapid cooling. So you don't want to leave large pots of food to cool on the counter. We don't want to leave any of the food that you've prepared in the slow cookers or multi cookers. We don't want you to leave the food in there or put the pot directly in the fridge or freezer. That's not going to rapidly cool the food. So you want to make sure you're dividing the hot leftovers into small, shallow containers, about no more than 2 to 3 inches deep to cool those quickly. And then lastly, the vacuum sealer. So this is a method of storage that you can do. So you can use the vacuum sealer to remove the air, which is going to drastically slow down spoilage and also help prevent freezer burn. So, this would help allow leftovers to be safely refrigerated for up to 7 days. Or if you want to use the freezer, it's for a much longer term. All right, so noteworthy kitchen gadgets that I did not talk about on here, but I think they are important tools for food safety. The first one is refrigerator and freezer thermometers, just making sure that, our storage is safe, that our refrigerators are at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or below, so it's maintaining that TCS food at the correct temperature, and also making sure our freezer is at 0 degrees Fahrenheit or below, making sure that the food is actually remaining frozen. The next one is multiple cutting boards. This is really helpful to prevent cross-contamination. If you've got color-coded cutting boards, that's just a bonus on there. Just to, keep everything clean and organized. Um, Another option for noteworthy kitchen gadgets, I did just mention this, but the shallow containers for storage, having those containers available to you, it helps make the important choice, the right choice, instead of, having to use the pot to put the food in the refrigerator. And then lastly, making sure that you've got labels. I mean, you could use anything. You could use tape. I just have a picture of these nice stickers here, but you could use tape and you're writing the food item, and you're also writing the date that either you need to toss the food or the date that it was prepared. That's all really important kitchen gadgets that I think of when I think of food safety. Okay. Key takeaways here is time and temperature with all these kitchen gadgets, they matter. So the digital food thermometer, it's the single most important safety gadget in the kitchen. Those of you that are in this presentation right now, you probably already knew that. I'm just reiterating it to you. But we can use all these new devices that are out in the market, but at the end of the day, we still have to, verify that internal temperature to make sure the food is safe and ready to eat. Also, another key takeaway is to make sure that you're following the instructions. So, making sure that you taking the time, especially if a kitchen gadget is new to you, not assuming how to use it, but making sure that you're reading the directions on how to use it. Even if you have one, say you have one air fryer and then you get a new one, there could be discrepancies with what the manufacturer says, or maybe there's new science or something on it. It's really important to read those directions. So correct usage is important. Making sure that you're checking the temperature is also a non-negotiable. And that's just to make sure that you're using it correctly. So in terms of safety, physical safety, you are safe, but also making sure the food you're preparing for people is safe. And then the last takeaway is, as like a food safety educator, we talk about the food thermometer all the time. And some people they're not buying into it that it's important. So maybe consider framing it as a benefit to using a food thermometer. And this is just an example of like how to communicate some of these kitchen gadgets. But, I think about, when you are using that air fryer that I talked about, and say you're cooking wings, and the outside of the wings are nice and crispy and it looks beautiful and brown, but then when you take a bite into it, it's raw. Like that's not great quality of food. If that individual used a food thermometer, they'd be able to tell, oh wow, this chicken is only 113 degrees inside. So I know that it's not ready to eat. But using a food thermometer, for example, you could try to frame it as a benefit. If for whatever reason, the obvious benefit of, preventing foodborne illness isn't enough, maybe the aspect of, cooking well, cooking great food, maybe shifting the conversation that way might sway people. Just something to chew on, something to think about. Okay. And then on here, I have my email if anyone has any questions. And then this is also a QR code, NC State Extension. We've got fact sheets on cutting boards, air fryers, immersion wands, multi-cookers, slow cookers, a bunch of different kitchen gadgets if y'all are interested in looking at those. So I thought I'd share that.
Thank you, Candace. And I just want to say I love that last like tip about reframing how we think about food safety to be from like an enjoyment standpoint, like good texture. So I appreciated that a lot. So we have about 10 to 15 minutes for questions for Candace. I see some already in the Q&A, but now's your chance if you want to get those in. And I do want to know after the Q&A, I have some resources and news about an event that's coming to share with you. So please stick around after the Q&A. Okay, Candace, I see a question here. Any advice for people who want to thaw their turkey in the garage? Not kidding, I've had people ask.
Okay, that is a wonderful question. So, I guess in theory they could do that. Us as food safety educators, we do not usually recommend that. But if a consumer is going to do that, my recommendation is that you are continually checking the temperature of that turkey, like like maybe every 30 minutes. But what you don't want them to do is, have it thaw in the garage and then they just leave it be for 4 hours and then, just hope.
Okay. A question about sous vide. As long as you hold it above the danger zone, can you hold it for a few hours knowing it will be microbially safe? The quality attributes may not be great though.
Yes, you can, in terms of safety, but yeah, you are right about the quality.
Okay. My husband loves the George Foreman grill. What information do you have on grills, if any?
We don't have information on grills. With the George Foreman grill that I am thinking of, I think the biggest concern I would have on there is making sure that you're cleaning and sanitizing it properly. And also, as with any food that you are cooking with, you want to make sure that you're checking that internal temperature.
Okay. How safe is the thawing mat?
So the thawing mat is safe. It all depends on the time that the food is on the thawing mat. So it needs to be less than 4 hours that it's on the thawing mat. And it's kind of a similar answer to the individual that asked about thawing in the garage. You want to continually check the temperature of that item you are thawing.
Okay, this one's about fish. Please talk a little more about ROP packaging and removing fish. I get this question a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So reduced oxygen packaging fish. Fish is a reservoir for Clostridium botulinum. So when you have it in a reduced oxygen environment, there is a concern that Clostridium botulinum, it will thrive and grow. So to prevent that, all you're doing is food that is in a reduced oxygen packaging, you can either remove the fish entirely, and put it in, like a Ziploc bag or on a plate or something, or you could just cut it as well. Just cut the packaging so there's oxygen introduced into that packaging. But we just want to make sure that we are not encouraging an environment for Clostridium botulinum to grow in our fish, if that helps.
Okay, this one's also about fish. They wanted some more clarity on a point about not freezing fish.
On not freezing fish?
Maybe whoever that question is, could you clarify your question for us and we'll come back to it? And in the meantime, here's one. How can we convince people to use containers for storing food instead of putting a pot in the fridge?
It's a wonderful question. Honestly, I have a family member that does that, and I have told them multiple times, but the best thing I can say is making sure, like, It's hard for a consumer, but trying to encourage, um, you know, I don't know if like you're gifting containers or making the smart choice the easy choice. Basically, we talk about that in nutrition, but like that's kind of similar as making sure that there are containers that people can easily put the food in instead of that pot. But I mean, really the issue is when you're putting that large pot of food in the refrigerator, it's not that pot is hot. There's not going to be rapid cooling that we need to prevent that harmful bacteria from growing.
Hmm. Okay. Does NC State Extension have any publications or fact sheets on all these gadgets?
The majority of them we do. Trying to think which one we don't. I think we don't have a specific one on food thermometers, but I might be incorrect about that. But yeah, most of them we do.
Okay. People often ask about how soon they can put hot food leftovers into smaller containers than into the fridge. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, we a few years ago at NC State, we actually did a small experiment on this, and what we found is with these newer refrigerators, they actually work more effectively than previous ones, like, from like 20, 30 years ago. So, if you have a newer refrigerator, you can immediately put hot food into these shallow containers and immediately cool it in the refrigerator. With the older refrigerators that you might have, you still can do it. If you feel more comfortable waiting, 15, 20 minutes, you can do that as well. The main point is that, you're not letting the food sit out for, a few hours, forgetting about it, and then putting it in the refrigerator.
Yeah. Just sharing a comment someone put in here on the containers. They recommended give people containers for Christmas so they'll use them.
Yes, I completely agree.
Okay. Is it safe to thaw and refreeze food if the food has been thawed properly?
That's a great question. Yes, you can, but this is where the quality of the food is going to come into question. It might be okay, but maybe not. You could think about it like, if there was a power outage and, your ice cream thawed and then you froze it again. It's not going to be the best tasting ice cream at that point, but it's safe to eat depending on, how long it was out of that temperature danger zone.
Yeah. Uh, Convincing people to use thermometers is still difficult. Do you think it's because it's not always handy?
Yes, I do. I know that this is some of it is I think if you didn't see someone in your home modeling that behavior, they don't realize how important it is to use a thermometer. They think it's just someone being overly cautious, which us as food safety educators know that's not the case.
Yeah. Okay. More fish questions. If I'm thawing my fish in the refrigerator, do I have to open the bag it is in?
If it is in a reduced oxygen packaging, so if it's vacuum sealed, yes, you can just cut the top. You don't have to take it completely out of the packaging.
Mhm. Okay. This person asked for some suggestions on educating consumers on using air fryers with raw products.
That's a good one. We have a fact sheet at NCC that covers all of that actually. I think we have actually two fact sheets because that's a topic on its own.
Yeah. Okay. I think this one is in reference to why people might not use thermometers. Could it be because we don't see it on cooking shows?
Yeah, exactly. It's not modeled. So we don't see it with, not usually, we don't see it with celebrities. We don't see it on, for the younger crowd, TikTok as much. It's, I understand why with cooking shows maybe we don't see it. I remember, I think it was at the partnership conference a few years ago. They said that, it took a lot of time to show people to wash that you're going to wash your hands before you cook, and you don't have that hook for people to watch you. It's kind of similar, but if you don't have like a family member that's using that food thermometer and they're telling you how important it is, um there's not as much buy-in, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll end on just one final question. What, this is kind of a tricky one, but I'm going to ask anyway. What if people could take like one important big thing away from today, what would you say they should take away?
Don't shy away from using these awesome kitchen gadgets on the market. However, that's your first step. The next step is always going to be you need to check with a food thermometer the internal temperature of that food. So they're pairs. So the new kitchen gadget that you've got and you're excited about, and also that food thermometer, that old trusty gadget.
The gadgets go together.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Candace. I appreciate all the great information we have. Um, Candace is going to let us send her slides out to you. So you will get a copy of those in the follow-up email after the webinar. So keep an eye out for that. And now I have some resources to share with everyone. Just bear with me for a second while I pull up my slides. Hopefully you can see those now. I don't see any comments in the chat saying you can't. Okay, so first up, we have a new air fryer safety graphics that we made. This is the first time we are sharing about them at this webinar. And I do want to give some credit to NC State University. They have a pretty detailed air fryer flyer that Candace mentioned. So we use that as a reference for making these. They're available now online. The link is there. And these ones are made specifically for social media with like the correct dimensions to use online. But you could also put them in a newsletter or in handouts or presentations that you're doing on air fryers. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about our food safety myth busters. These are graphics on common food safety myths and misconceptions. And what I like about them is they have like in the facts some of the science behind the myths. And one we have a couple on here is microwaves, which was our most popular kitchen gadget from our opening poll. And I think sometimes people are so used to using microwaves that we assume we know what to do. So there's a couple myths here on microwaves. One is on the importance of standing time and microwave instructions. And the other talks about how food can be heated unevenly and why you should know the wattage of your microwave and make sure you're following those package instructions. There's also some that will be really handy if you're talking to people about Thanksgiving meal prep. That one on the far right, I know it's kind of tiny, but that one talks about how to know when your chicken or turkey is done. You need that gadget, that thermometer. You can't just tell by the color of it on the inside. And these are, they're graphics so they can be used online. You can post them on display boards, share them all kinds of places. Okay, talking about food thermometers. If you need a quick guideline for safe cooking tips to share with people or maybe post in a kitchen, we have that. We also have one on storage times for foods in the fridge and refrigerator. So as people are starting to ask how long they can keep their Thanksgiving leftovers, this might be a handy graphic to share with people. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about Story of Your Dinner. This is our big campaign that holds all of our holiday resources. It has all kinds of things in it. several brochures and flyers on topics like baking, food delivery, buffets and parties, how to handle frozen food, hand washing. The ones you see here, I kind of want to point out the one on the left is a holiday meal flyer that has some specific turkey handling instructions in it. The second one over is 11 food safety tips for the holidays, but those are also good year round. There's one on frozen foods. I think around Thanksgiving is a time people are sometimes trying out new recipes or recipes they don't cook often. So it's a good time to remind them to follow the package instructions with frozen foods. There's also some fun kids graphics. If you work with kids, there's like this activity flyer is spot the food safety do's and don'ts, which is really fun. Okay, there's several videos in the story of your dinner stuff. There's one on what story of your dinner means. It kind of talks about the process, like what food safety is like from the very beginning when you plant all the way to up when you're at home and you need to, as you're prepping the food, it talks about remembering the core four: clean, separate, cook, and chill. And it's just a 3-minute video. It's pretty short. There's one on holiday baking tips, and there's a lot of recipe videos, including a turkey one. All our recipe videos have the food safety steps actually in the video. So it has little prompts reminding people when to wash their hands, what temperature they should cook things to, and so on. And it also there's also tools that are specifically for educators with Story of Your Dinner. So there is a whole guide and communication toolkit that gives you like sample social media posts, graphics, ideas for how to use the resources. There's a news media toolkit if you're talking to anyone in the media during this holiday time. There's tips for that. And there's tons and tons of graphics on there on hand washing, food tips like use a food thermometer, and a couple on specific pathogens like E. coli. Turkey Day, of course, is coming. We've mentioned that a lot. These are just a couple specific Thanksgiving resources in case you're looking for those. We have a page called Talking Turkey that has this really great graphic you can share. Don't Wing It is tips for handling produce safely, and that has all kinds of resources to go with it: flyers, brochures, graphics, and a guide. There's even a great tool on the science behind those messages. And then we have a flour and baking page if you need to give anyone tips about flours, but about baking and the safety of flour around this time. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit really quickly about an upcoming event we have that we're excited to be hosting called the Turkey Talk Virtual Office Hours. It's Turkey Talk with all the sides to dish. Will take place Monday, November 24th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern on Zoom, and this is open to the public. So this event is a chance. It's free office hours where people can come talk to food safety experts and ask them their questions about Thanksgiving meal prep. So if they're curious how long they can keep their leftovers, what's the safest way to cook their turkey, what's the best way to thaw it, when do they need to start thawing it, this is a chance for them to come and have those questions answered. So we really want to encourage people to help get the word out about this event so we can make sure people feel confident as they're cooking their Thanksgiving meals. So if you go to that registration link there is actually a little PDF toolkit to help you share about the event. It has some text for a newsletter. It has social media posts. It has graphics. So help us get the word out about this so we can help families safely cook their Thanksgiving meals. And I'm just going to check a couple questions in the chats here. Yes, all of this information will be emailed to you. You'll get all the slides and everything. So I want to stop sharing here and do something a little fun with our last couple minutes of the webinar here. We'll make sure we get you out on time. I want to have a chance for you guys to share any resources you have with each other. So I'm just going to pull this up for a minute. Oh, hold on, let me try that again. I apologize for the technical difficulties, everyone. Okay, so if this is Minty, we used it at the beginning for the poll. So if you go to Minty again, or you scan the QR code, or you click this link in the chat, this is a chance for you to share your kitchen gadget resources or holiday resources with each other. You can go here and put in any ideas you have for talking about kitchen gadgets with people. If you have a really great idea for how to talk to people about food thermometers or air fryers or anything, you can throw that in here now, or any resources you know of. I see the link for NC State's air fryer flyer in there. So feel free to add that in there. And we will share anything shared in that Menti poll after the webinar. Just leave it up for a minute. It will stay live. So if you want to go back later and add your resources or look for resources, you can do that. And I just have a couple quick closing slides, and that's the end of the webinar. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today. If you want to stay involved with us, you can reach out to me at any time. This is my email, kweston@fightback.org. You can follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Make sure you're getting our free newsletter. You can go to fightback.org/get involved for more ways to get involved with us. I want to say a huge thank you to all of our contributing partners listed here and our federal liaisons for making what we do possible. And a final reminder on CEUs, we will send those to you. They will be online. If you're seeking NCHEC ones, fill out that questionnaire by Friday, December 12th. And that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Glad to have you. Bye, everyone.